Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live this week. We are super excited. We're going to have Neil talking to us all about Africa. And we thought we'd do something a little bit different this week just to spice it up. And we're going to start with a beautiful little video for you guys. So here you go. That was so beautiful. Uh-oh, we lost Neil. He'll be back in a second. So this is one of the things that we find with Facebook Lives and all technology is that sometimes you lose people and we get disconnected, and that's just part of life. Angie, you want to unmute yourself?
Hello, and we are so excited to have Neil today because his experience with Africa starts essentially from his childhood, Neil.
Yes, thank you.
We're sharing the roots are.
I just dropped it there for a moment. Thanks for having me on, Janet and Angie. Yeah, so a little bit of background about myself. I was born in South Africa, and as a child, I would go with my parents to some of those places that actually appeared on the video. So I can remember when I was 6 years old, my first interaction with a large elephant. And it's vivid, it's in my head to this day, exactly as it occurred. I was in the back, the elephant trumpeted, we got very scared, we shouted, my dad drove off. But so I've been involved with African wildlife for a long time. After spending a couple of years with IBM, my wife and I decided to leave corporate America, head back to South Africa. We purchased a safari lodge and owned and managed and ran a safari lodge in the African bush, very similar to what you saw. And we did that for 7 or 8 years. And, sometimes you always have to worry about what you wish for. And so it was a tremendous amount of fun and a very, very exciting project to do. We had 2 wonderful children. We felt it was enough time in the bush. We needed to get back to America. And so we sold up the lodge. It's still there to this day. I still send clients there frequently. Moved back to America and started the safari tourism business. And that's what I'm doing today with Outbound in Africa. So each and every day, I talk to my clients. I talk to clients such as yourself. And I work with eager travelers who want to go to Africa and experience some of what you saw in the video.
That's so great. And I think the fact that, there's not a lot of people that can say that they lived in the bush and owned a safari lodge. So I think that definitely gives you a very unique perspective and makes you just this ultra super expert in the safari space and the safari experiences. And Neil and I have put together some really incredible trips for clients throughout Africa. And I think, let's just kind of talk about what that's and how do people even begin to think about Africa. I think it's one of those things that it's an overwhelming thought. You know, when you get excited and okay, I want to go on a safari, it's a little bit overwhelming. Like, how do I even go about planning an African safari? What's that even like? Where do I even start? It's a giant continent. A lot of people are embarrassed to say, like, maybe don't even know where in Africa they're supposed to go.
Yeah, you're quite right, Janet. It is complicated. Africa is a huge continent. You know, flying from Central Africa to Southern Africa can take you 6-7 hours. So it's very, very big. Trying to Google safaris in Africa is helpful, but you're going to get so much information you really won't know how to, you know, pick A from B. So the first step, actually easy step in planning a safari, is to work with a trusted partner. And just as your clients have worked with you in the past, going to Europe, going to South America, they will ask you, Angie, Janet, how do we get to Africa? You will in turn come to me, an expert, and we'll start chatting with your clients. We'll figure out when they want to go. We'll figure out who is traveling. Is it mom and dad? Is it mom, dad, and the kids? Is it a multi-generation family? Perhaps they bring in their parents as well. So we'll figure out who is going. We'll figure out when they want to go. And based upon that, we'll then start thinking about which country might be the best for them. We send clients to about 16 different countries in Africa. But for a first-time safari goer from America, if it's a husband and wife and their 2 kids, I'm immediately starting to think about sending them to South Africa. There's a lot of similarities in some of the first world aspects to America. Beautiful cities like Cape Town, which is a great way to arrive at as a destination. It's a wonderful cosmopolitan city. It's got fantastic wineries. It's got very scenic beauty, Table Mountain just behind it. It's a great way to arrive, get settled in, hear the different dialects, hear the different languages, get over your jet lag, and then mentally prepare for your safari, which is just a short 2-hour flight away from Cape Town. So those factors get considered and planned for. So South Africa is a very, very popular choice for first-time safari goers, whether it's families, multi-gen groups, or even honeymoon couples.
Neil, when you choose the lodge, and let's consider it a family, like you said, mom, dad, 2 kids, maybe grandma and grandpa, multi-generational, versus, you know, a group of couples that are getting away. What are the things you should look for when choosing the lodge and the location of the lodge?
Yeah, so that's an excellent point. And if there was a group of 3 couples, say 6 people, I would consider some safari lodges adjacent to the Kruger National Park. If it was a multi-generational family with granny, grandpa, who often pick up the bill, and we're grateful for that, mom and dad and kids, they might be more concerned, say, with malaria and would prefer a malaria-free area because they don't want to take the pills, they're worried about the side effects, whatever the case may be. And so immediately I'd shift gears and I'd look at properties which are not adjacent to the Kruger Park. They're outside of the malaria area, Madikwe Game Reserve, newer game reserves down in the Western Cape. So just something as simple as that, I can immediately eliminate a whole selection of safari lodges. And then another key factor is budget. How much money would the family like to spend? Would they like separate accommodation? Do they want villa-style accommodation? So each of these factors play a part in selecting which lodge I would ultimately propose.
And Neil, I think, just going back, first I want to say hi to everyone who's watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. We have Kim, we have John, we have Adam. And if you are watching us, drop any comments or questions and we'll try to get to them. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. Drop us an emoji if you've been on a safari before. But, one of the things I was going to talk about with you, and this is the question that comes up 100% of the time when talking to first-time safari planners is, we talked about the properties adjacent to Kruger National Park. Yeah. And I think it's really important to clarify why we don't put people in Kruger National Park and why we put them adjacent to Kruger National Park, because that's a big, important topic. And I would say, wouldn't you say, like top 3 questions?
For sure. So the Kruger National Park is widely known. It's a common name, and a lot of, if you start Googling safari, Kruger National Park is going to come up very quickly. For Americans, I can compare Kruger National Park to, say, Yellowstone National Park. It's it's very big, it's a beautiful place. It's 2.4 million hectares. It's bigger than Rhode Island, and it's very, very large. And it is situated in the northeastern part of South Africa. So literally, Cape Town is in the bottom left, and Kruger National Park is the bottom right. And about 110 years ago, wise president of South Africa, Paul Kruger, he could see the wildlife just slowly being eradicated as the population started moving and expanding into the country, until finally this little corner in the northeastern part of the country, which hadn't been populated yet, he decided, okay, time out. We need to preserve this. And so he wisely proclaimed the land, made it a national park, and it's been there to this day. So it's a spectacular place. It has always looked like it looks, which is wild Africa. It is public. And so if I wanted to go and visit the Kruger National Park, I would get in my car, my Toyota Camry or my Mercedes-Benz, and I would go to the park. I would pay an entrance fee. I'd get on the tarred road and I'd go and look for wildlife, and I would have a pretty cool experience. Very, very different to the experience that you get in the private game reserves, which are situated next door to the Kruger National Park. So in summary, Kruger National Park, you drive yourself, you get there yourself, you figure out which road to go on. And as the sun starts setting, 5, 6 p.m., you have to be in one of the camps that are available inside the Kruger National Park, which are not basic. They're definitely not luxurious. They're at an average level, and then you would spend your night there. You would sort yourself out with food. You'd have your cooking implements. You'd barbecue. You'd do something. The private reserves adjacent to the Kruger National Park, so literally right next door, there's no fence separating the private reserves with the Kruger parks. So from an animal standpoint, it's all just the same area. It's the same bush. It's their territory. There's no difference in the look and the feel. However, the real difference is the quality and the level of the lodges inside the private reserves, and the fact that when you go on safari, you're going on safari in a specially designed 4x4 off-road vehicle. You're being driven by a highly trained, competent professional, a field guide, a qualified field guide. He's typically armed. Most safari lodges would have a tracker on the front of the vehicle. This is a person who knows how to spot the tracks, sees the tracks on the road. And you'll conduct your safaris early in the morning for a couple of hours, and then later on in the afternoon for a couple of hours, finishing up in the evening. So the experience that you get in a private reserve is vastly different and far more superior than when you're in the Kruger National Park.
And Neil, I think one of the things too, and I don't know, I didn't catch if you mentioned it, that vehicles are not allowed off-road in Kruger National Park, but the vehicles in the private game reserves can go off-road, correct? So
that's a key point, Jenna. Thanks for bringing that up. When you're in the Kruger National Park and you see wildlife, you will stop, you'll take out your binoculars, you'll be like, oh my gosh, look, there's a lion, there's an elephant. And if that lion or elephant is 200 yards from the road, that's your sighting. And it's wonderful, especially if it's the first time that's happened. I mean, I grew up for 15, 20 years looking at wildlife through binoculars, being very excited, and it was great. Until I experienced watching wildlife and encountering wildlife on a private vehicle in a private reserve. And so if you're traveling and we see tracks across the road, and oh my gosh, there's some fresh lion tracks, and we look in the distance, oh, there's a lion 200 yards away. Your professional guide will engage low range on his 4x4 vehicle, head off road, navigate carefully through the bush, around trees, through riverbeds, boom. Next thing you know, you're close up to that lion or that herd of elephant, and your sighting has gone from good to spectacular. It's a completely different experience. I'm just going to share a photo if I could, which gives a good example of that. There we go. All right, let's see if our tech works. Yes, I do want to do that. And
Yeah, I mean, I think that the whole concept of the safari is so interesting. There's so many different things that you need to understand and know when planning a safari. I mean, it's not as simple as like, oh, I'm just going to book this hotel or book this flight. You really have to, there's just a lot of logistical and very complicated logistics that you really want to have a professional put together for you, because the last thing you want is to get lost somewhere in the bush in Africa, miss your transfers, miss your connections, not know where you're going. I mean, there's just those little details actually can make or break your trip.
Yes, you're quite right. And thanks for sharing that pic. Yeah, I'm going to answer that question right now, Janet. So this is, of course, me. And I'm in a off-road vehicle. You can just see the mirror. I can tell you with confidence that based upon that mirror, that's a Toyota Land Cruiser. I had one for 8 years, loved it. And behind me, I'm in the Masai Mara, and behind me is a pride of lions. And you've got some youngsters there. Those cubs are maybe 6 to 9 months. So when people say, I'm going to go on safari, how close am I going to get? Must I bring my big zoom lens? Very often I tell my clients, bring your wide angle lens and don't worry with binoculars, because that's how close you're going to get. So a good example. And this is the key differentiator why you want to go to private reserves versus the public reserves, because we're off-road here.
And we do have a question from Kim. She wants to know if there's restrictions for safaris during COVID, like are face masks required? Is there social distancing on the trucks? And can you still get close to the animals and go off-road like in this photograph?
Yeah, great segue. Thanks, Janet. So firstly, safari in general has been socially distant forever. The camps and the lodges and the properties where they are just located, it's far away from big cities, so there's very low population density already. The staff that work at these properties generally live at those properties, and they go home on a 3-week or 6-weekly schedule. So there's pretty much isolation already occurs there normally. The lodges that I like to work with are small. So maybe there's 5 rooms, so 10 people. Maybe on a larger lodge, maybe there's 8 rooms, so 16 people. So just from a other traveler interaction, it's less. Because of COVID and because of everybody's concerns and goals to deal with it and put our travelers at ease, lodges have signed up to world-recognized international travel and tourism safety standards. They've vetted themselves. They have introduced protocols and policies. So part of those include perhaps instead of a communal meal at dinner where the 3 families or 4 groups of travelers would sit together and talk about the day, they're now separated. So that's one example. On the safari vehicles, typically with the lodges I use, the vehicles are not jam-packed with people. They might have 4 or they might have 6 people. There's typically a seat spaced in between. So just from traveling on a vehicle on a safari standpoint, safer than traveling on a bus. Is it a requirement to wear masks? Each lodge is a little bit different, but let's just assume, yes, when you're out on safari, you're putting a mask on, you're being safety conscious. It's not a terrible thing, it's a good thing. Is there any issue interacting with the animals? No, there is not. It's not affected at all.
And it's interesting too, because, Africa opened, South Africa recently reopened, but parts of Africa have been reopened for a while. And we had clients in Africa together in September, and they had a great experience. Their biggest issues, I think, were really just the flights and the logistics of getting out of the United States. But, as hopefully we see an end to this pandemic and flight schedules resume and become more normal, I mean, what is none of us can really predict. We don't have a crystal ball, but Neil, what would you think by next summer, do you think that the safari experience is going to be more or less normal? Do you think that we're still going to have certain restrictions that we need to watch out for? Like if people are thinking, okay, I want to go on safari in June, July, August.
Yeah, I would say that as of today, planning for June and July, firstly, is a great thing to do. There is excellent availability at these safari lodges, which usually 6 months prior to American summer, often they're already fully booked. So there's great availability. There's wonderful offers and specials and incentives in order to encourage travel again. So that's another good thing. And in my mind, I feel that the countries in Africa that have opened have done a great job of addressing the risks, have done a great job of getting everybody trained and up to speed with the COVID safety related protocols required, whether it's hand sanitizer, whether it's cleaning the table right afterwards. They've done an excellent job of that. And, quite frankly, as long as you're comfortable with traveling on the airline, and I've read a number of articles which, the airlines tout that, they feel that their airlines are very safe. And in fact, air travel is possibly even safer than, going to the supermarket for shopping. So personally, and I'm going to be doing it myself in March or April, I'll be traveling to Africa. My business partner is currently there right now. She's spending the next 3 months there. But as far as I'm concerned, I feel traveling to Africa for a holiday in June, July it's a wonderful idea. And I would feel quite safe doing it, and certainly quite safe recommending it to my clients.
That's great.
Yeah.
With many of these boutique lodges having as few as 5 to 8 rooms, I'm assuming we're seeing a larger percentage of the lodges being rented out at full capacity for private purposes. So could you talk about the added amenities when you rent out an entire lodge?
Yeah. Thanks, Angie. That's becoming more and more popular, and it's because you might get 2 families that travel together, or a multi-generational group where there's a couple of kids and then their kids. And so over the last 10 years or so, I've actually watched the number of these private villa type lodge experiences starting to grow, and it's great. I mean, in fact, some lodges completely changed their business models, where instead of having 8 or 10 individual suites, they combined it, and now they have 4 family suites. And each suite can take 4, 6, or 8. So let's just talk about, why is that a great thing to do? The first thing is, from a catering standpoint, from a timing standpoint, everything kind of operates at your schedule. So whilst typically at a safari lodge, you've got that early morning safari, followed up with some R&R during the day, and then that late afternoon going into the evening safari. If you have the villa booked out for yourself, you will have a vehicle dedicated to you. You have a ranger and a tracker dedicated to you. You will have a chef, a butler, waitstaff, all dedicated to you based upon when you want to wake up in the morning. Do you want to have breakfast before you want to go on safari? Do you want to have a quick snack, go out, and then meet later in the bush somewhere for a bush breakfast? All of that is set and determined by the party that is booked into that safari lodge. So the villa experience has really changed. It's grown, it's developed, and if anybody is even wants to be extra cautious around COVID, that clearly, in my mind, is the safest way to participate in a safari. Would be in that private villa style experience.
And typically, obviously, absent COVID, how much time do you need to be able to rent out a safari lodge?
Okay, so whenever my clients ask me, Neil, how I'm going to Africa, I've got 8 or 9 days. How long should I go on safari for? I want to see Cape Town. I want to taste some wine, maybe swim in the ocean. What about safari? And how long should I go for? So my advice is try and experience 2 different properties. Try and experience in hopefully 2 different areas or regions or reserves. And if you can, 6 nights is perfect. So 3 and 3. And also with these villa type properties as well, often they have like a 3-night minimum, and you can understand the logistical reasons for doing that. That's not difficult. But experiencing 2 different regions or zones, not necessarily countries, and I'll talk about that later, but experiencing 2 different regions, even if they're only 30 or 50 miles apart, the vegetation can look different. The terrain can look different. You're getting another experience with a different lodge, a different property, and their style of delivering the service is a little bit different. The way they
do you have pictures for us? Do you have any photos of safaris that you can share with us? I think that would be really great to have up on the screen while we chat.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. Let me just...
A picture speaks 1,000 words. And I know that when you and I have put together our itineraries, I mean, it's usually the photos that sell. It's not really anything we can say.
That's right.
Photos of these magnificent places, and they really just, are wowed. I mean, every time I look at pictures of these lodges, they just take your breath away.
Exactly. Have you got a new pic? There we go. Yeah. So take a look at this lodge. It's Bumi Hills in Zimbabwe. It's up in the northwestern part of Zimbabwe, and that's not the ocean there. That's Kariba Dam, a giant dam in the northwestern part of Zimbabwe. So Bumi Hills, one of the lodges within African bush camps, and there the staff are getting ready for dinner. So that's one example of a gorgeous property, gorgeous view, and I'm going to show you another. Let's see what else we got here.
Neil, we have a couple of questions and comments.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
So we have a question. What are your thoughts on Shamwari Game Reserve?
Okay, so I've visited Shamwari, unsurprisingly, and it's located in the Eastern Cape, and it's a very, very successful, very well-run, well-managed game reserve. They have a variety of different lodge options inside Shamwari Game Reserve. So if you're a family, you might want to focus on the one. If you want to go rustic, focus on the other. Ultra luxury, go to Eagle's Nest or Eagle's Creek. The area where it's located, I would think carefully about what time of the year you'd want to go there, because American summer being South African winter, Shamwari in June, July, and August, from experience, can get quite chilly. And whenever people think Africa, I generally think warm, hot, dusty, sun. Eastern Cape, which is where Shamwari is at, in their winter, it can be cold, can be a little bit rainy. Temperatures may get down in the 40s and the 50s. If you're going to Shamwari in the summer, it's great, it's fabulous, it's warm. The vegetation looks different to me because I've spent so much time up in the greater Kruger area. It looks different to the East Africa, which is often my client's vision of an African safari. So East Africa, you've got those grand wide open plains. And in fact, if you look at my picture here, this is a lovely safari tent overlooking the plains of Serengeti. And so when people think East Africa, that's a view. Shamwari does not look like that. It looks different. The vegetation's a bit thicker, it's a bit dense, but beautiful game reserve, incredibly well run. You will have a great time.
And Neil, I think one of the things, a lot of what we do is we put together South Africa, and then a lot of the times we'll add Victoria Falls into South Africa safaris. Let's talk a little bit about Victoria Falls and what makes that region just so magnificent. And obviously, if you have some pictures, that would be awesome to share too.
I do, as luck would have it. Thank you.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh.
Okay, so there is Victoria Falls. So Victoria Falls, one of the natural wonders of the world. I've got to experience it a few times now, and it really is breathtakingly beautiful. Hearing the roar of the water is astonishing, and it's certainly one of the most popular destinations, one of the most popular add-ons to a safari to Southern Africa. And it's very often used as an ending point of the safari, and sometimes used as a starting point for a safari. So Victoria Falls is situated in Zimbabwe, right in the western side of Zimbabwe. So that means it's on the border. If you look at that photograph, you can see that road in the bottom left-hand corner. That bridge is actually joining Zimbabwe and Zambia. So if you were combining safaris between Zimbabwe and Zambia, Victoria Falls, fabulous place to start at. And with all of the changes that are going on with international flights and departures, getting an international flight straight into Victoria Falls is now possible on Kenya Airways, as well as Ethiopian Airlines. So if you chose not to go to South Africa, well, let's say you're a second-time safari goer and you think, you know what, I did Cape Town and Kruger 2 years ago. I want to be a bit more adventurous. Let me go a bit old school. Let me try a Zambian safari. I would encourage you to fly into Victoria Falls on Kenyan, on Ethiopian, a couple of days, getting adjusted to getting over your jet lag, experiencing Victoria Falls, and then before crossing the bridge, going into Zambia and heading off on a wonderful safari there. So Victoria Falls, very popular. I'm just going to segue quickly, Janet. Combining countries today is more difficult than it was pre-COVID. And the primary reason is the rule or desire of each country to want to check a negative COVID test on entry. So completely reasonable, completely understandable. And if you're going to South Africa, you would go to a laboratory, get the test done, get your piece of paper, arrive in South Africa or arrive in Tanzania, show them, they look at it, stamp, take your temperature, welcome to Tanzania, welcome to South Africa. Combining two countries, most likely your second country is going to want the same thing. And plans are in place in order to facilitate getting that COVID test whilst you're in South Africa and before you're heading up to Victoria Falls. And these plans are good and they're exactly what you think. I mean, for example, in the remote areas, they're going to have people come to the lodges, a central location, in order to give you the COVID test. The speed with which they can get the results is changing dramatically, usually heading towards minutes and hours. Botswana, when people leave Botswana and go to South Africa, they've introduced rapid testing at the airport. So you would go to the airport in Maun, you've finished your safari in Botswana, you'd go to the airport in Maun, you're going to fly to Cape Town in about 4 hours, take your temperature, take you to the little room, do a rapid test, give you your results 45 minutes, 60 minutes later. Great, thumbs up, you're all good. You haven't caught COVID. Why? Because you're in the middle of beautiful Botswana, Okavango Delta, interacting with nobody other than wildlife. And you're off down to Cape Town to finish up your wonderful holiday. So yeah, so combining countries, it's a little bit trickier now, but it's like every week, every 2 weeks, I'm reading more information about how the governments combined with the safari tour operators and tourism organizations are really thinking outside the box and getting together and just solving this problem, which of course, once the vaccine comes around, it's going to solve itself. But coming up with these very clever measures in order to ensure people will be safe and they can meet the requirements of each country.
That's great. And I think, one of the other things I'd love to chat about is like, what are some of your favorite lodges? I mean, again, it's such a huge continent. There's so many. We could sit here and talk for 8 hours about all the different destinations, but I think maybe we talk about some of your favorite properties.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so this one here is breathtaking. It's Ngorongoro Crater, and there's only a handful, less than a handful, 3 lodges that have the ability to have a presence right on the rim of the canyon, of the crater, and get to experience a view like that each and every day. So Ngorongoro Crater Lodge is Condé Nast rated, the best boutique hotel of the world, rated, won countless awards. It's simply spectacular, and I've been lucky enough to visit, coming up on 300, just shy of 300 different safari lodges throughout all of the different countries that I represent. And Crater Lodge is right up there. Firstly, just for its scenic beauty, for its architecture and style and the way they've made these suites fit in with their location. The service levels that are on offer are spectacular, as you would expect in a property of this nature. And every suite, every window you look out in one of the suites, including the bathroom, has a view of the crater, overlooking the rim of the crater. So it's an absolutely wonderful experience. Can highly recommend it. Ngorongoro Crater Lodge. So that, and Ngorongoro Crater Lodge is in Tanzania, for those who don't know. So yeah, Janet, I would say that's my favorite right now. I have many more, but we would spend more than a few hours chatting on our chat to talk about my favorite.
And the Ngorongoro Crater Lodge, we have safari we've planned together that includes this region.
Yeah.
What I really like about it is, maybe we talk a little bit about how, the actual travel from one destination to the crater is almost like a safari in and of itself. Yeah. So there is quite a bit of travel when you're in Africa if you want to hit multiple destinations. And some of that does include inter-country flights. Some of that includes long transfers. But this particular transfer is almost like a safari transfer experience.
Yeah, 100% right, Janet. So talking about Tanzania, and which is really the birthplace, if you will, of the safari industry. And safari is Swahili for journey. And when you go on safari in Tanzania, it's really all about that. In South Africa, your safari may only really feel like it begins when you arrive at that private game reserve, at Sabi Sands Game Reserve. You land in your plane, the guy will meet you with your Jeep, you're driving the bush, you go to your lodge. Oh, I'm on safari. When you go on safari in East Africa, and let's talk about Tanzania right now, pretty much starts when you land at Kilimanjaro Airport, JRO. You'll be met with your guide. He'll have your vehicle, which is going to be your vehicle for the next week or 10 days, however long your safari is. Typically in Tanzania, you would spend that first night in a lovely lodge on the outskirts of the town of Arusha. That's Tanzania's second most populous town, 1.5 million people. And then the next morning, you begin your safari and you would head off to, let's say, Tarangire Game Reserve. Now, as soon as you leave the outskirts of Arusha, you're now in wild African bush, which looks very similar to this picture that you're looking at. You will see Maasai warriors. You will see Maasai farmers with their cows. And another 4 or 5 miles down the road, you'll see a herd of wildebeest. The game reserves in Tanzania, there's no fences around them. So the wildlife doesn't really know whether they're inside Tarangire Game Reserve or whether they're on the farmlands of a nearby Maasai community. So experiencing the wildlife happens very, very quickly when you're in Tanzania. The reserves and the lodges.
I mean, I'm very fascinated by the Maasai warriors.
Yeah.
Do you have pictures, and can we talk a little bit about, I know some of the lodges offer experiences with the Maasai warriors to kind of get to know their culture, understand their culture and their history and their heritage. It's really a fascinating culture. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Thanks, Janet. So the Maasai culture covers both Kenya and Tanzania, and it's been around for thousands of years. And this picture showing these Maasai warriors here, these is not fake, it's not put on, it's not a tourist show. Every day these guys live like this, they dress like this, they look after their cattle. It's all about the cattle, and it's the symbol of wealth, and it's their currency, and they live in close-knit, tight family communities, and each day they take the cattle out to graze and they bring them back, and everything is around the cattle. So it's nothing like Americans have experienced. So the feedback I've had from my clients is it's heartwarming. It's they're very impressed. They're shocked by the lack of tech that is not there. You know, electricity is unlikely to be there. Occasionally, there's a small solar panel just to help with charging of certain things. There might be one cell phone. It's not smart because the cell phone service is not that great. But each and every day, Maasai people live and choose to live like this. They're very comfortable with it, and they've been welcoming the tourists, and they share their lifestyle with them as you drive from one property, one lodge to the next lodge. You're able to go visit, spend some time, 30 minutes, an hour, see how they live, and move on.
And they have some interesting traditions as well, correct?
They do. A lot of them are around the cattle, the taking of blood from their cattle and mixing that with milk and having a drink. Like most things, if it's first time or if it's foreign to you, it may not, it may not taste like a Diet Coke or something you'd expect, or a Starbucks. But yeah, so there's very, very different traditions. The other tradition, which especially for younger or teenage travelers, is the multiple wives. That's also a sign of wealth, because there's endowments and dowries that have to be paid, generally in the form of cattle as well. And so the wealthier you are, the greater opportunity you have to get married more than once. And so each wife will have their own house, and it's a great lifestyle, and this is what they choose to do. Nobody's pressured or forced into doing anything.
It's fascinating. Neil, can you talk about how we can incorporate culture, music, arts into the safari experience as well?
Yeah, gosh. So art is very prevalent in Africa, and each of the different countries that my clients go to, choose to experience some or a little of it. Since we're in Tanzania, let's just talk about it. There's a World Heritage Site there, Stone Town, and it's often at the end of my client's agenda. They would spend 1 or 2 nights in Stone Town, which is on the island of Zanzibar, a little island just off the coast of Tanzania. And the different cultures, Arabic and African cultures that have been there for hundreds of years, result in this amazing art, new to Western eyes. It's different to what we see in America. But so, for example, the wooden door carvings and wooden window frames is a big thing in Zanzibar. And so going on a guided Stone Town tour and having an opportunity to see and photograph and experience these things is wonderful. Switching gears to Cape Town, we get more of an art scene, perhaps more similar to what we see here in the States. And a property that springs to mind, which is very up and plugged in and promotes South African art, is Element House. It's a beautiful 5-star property situated in Cape Town, up on the hill, overlooking the ocean. And some people describe it as an art gallery with amazing rooms where you can sleep at night. The art is continuously being refreshed every couple of months. Stuff's getting moved in and out. And to spend, if you're just slightly interested in art and experiencing a culture through the art, Element House would be at the top of my list to recommend for you.
Neil, I was going to tell you, one of my favorite pictures and one of my bucket list experience is the treetop experience. I don't know if you have a picture handy, but I think that is one of the most, that is the picture I was talking about. To me, it is like quintessential, amazing must-do safari. Talk a little bit about, for a second, what that's like and the safety around it. And is this really something that people do, or is this just a beautiful picture that we see on postcards?
Yeah, so the treehouse or the sleep out experience really is getting more and more popular over the last few years. I mean, 5 years ago, there was maybe one. And now, I can think of 15 20 different properties that offer an experience like this, and it really, really is wonderful. It will be the highlight of any safari experience. Okay, so is it safe? Yeah. Having guests get injured at a safari lodge is not good for business. Nobody likes it, and there's no way that this would be an offer if it wasn't safe. So to answer that first question, it's definitely safe. I'm going to bore you with all the details about how it's safe. It is very safe. So this example here is in Lion Sands, and you can see the mosquito net
going to this lodge, don't we?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I believe we have guests going to this lodge.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yeah, Lion Sands inside the Sabi Sands, right adjacent to Kruger. A couple of different lodges, and this tree high experience is affiliated with, is linked to one of them. So you would spend, say, 3 nights at a Lion Sands lodge, and on that middle night, you would spend a night in your tree house. So you would probably get there after lunch, and you'd set your bags down, maybe have an aperitif. You'd head out on safari, and you'd come back early evening. Maybe if you want to spend the sunset there, your dinner will be prepared and set up for you there. The sun will set. You'll spend the evening and the night literally under the stars. I've got another picture here. There we go. Experiencing the African night sky. But the best part about being in Africa at night are the sounds. And it's unbelievable. I was like, because I lived in an environment like this for 7-8 years, I have heard absolutely everything that goes on at night with the wildlife. And it is completely wonderful. There's nothing better. You will get goosebumps, and they will remain with you for a long time, that if you get an opportunity to hear a lion roar maybe a mile or 2 away. And I tell you now, lions roar every single night. And if you're lucky enough to be in a position to hear it, it's memorable.
So you can hear a lion roar from a mile away.
You can hear a lion roar possibly 4 miles away.
Wow.
If you hear a lion roar next to you, it's one part exhilaration, one part fear. You're not too sure what's going on. Your brain's kind of kicking in, like, hang on, it's absolutely exhilarating.
Neil, tell us, have you ever been so up close that you had that sense of fear? I think telling that story firsthand would be great.
Okay, so there we go. There's another picture. It's a bit smaller. So what that is people on foot with a guide. You see, you got 2 guides there and 2 clients. There are some weapons there, and it's during the daytime. So given this set of circumstances that I described, going out on a bushwalk, which is something I highly recommend and encourage, and all of the properties that we send our clients to typically do offer a bushwalk during the day. So going on a bushwalk like that is safe. And again, if it wasn't safe, it wouldn't be an offer. I got qualified as a walking guide when I had the lodge, and I would take clients out on bushwalks. And it was easily the favorite part, my favorite activity to do. So whenever we had clients in camp, and if someone wanted to go on a safari, I'd send my ranger, you take them out on the vehicle, I'll take the clients out on the bushwalk. So one experience I had, not involving a lion, but I was with these 2 college gals from Sweden. They were spending a couple of nights at the lodge. We went out on a bushwalk. I have my firearm always, and we're on a bushwalk. We're seeing some antelope. We see a giraffe. We see some wildebeest. We see some impala. Everything is great, wonderful. We're talking about the smaller things that go on in nature that sometimes a bit difficult to see because you're up in a vehicle that's moving and you can't see these tracks. So we're busy talking about tracks, and oh my gosh, look there's some cheetah tracks of a cheetah. And so I'm explaining why it's a cheetah, what makes it a cheetah. You can see the little claws that don't fully retract. Oh, even more exciting, look, these little tracks that look similar to the big ones, those are the cubs. I know that there's a female cheetah in the area. She's got a couple of cubs. Oh, great, very exciting. Oh, it's fresh because There's no degradation of the track. The wind hasn't blown stuff onto it. Oh, this is a fresh track. Oh, we're excited now. And we're about half a mile from camp. I finished this explanation. We walk another 20 steps and boom, there's, Mom Cheetah with her 3 cubs, 50 yards off the road. She'd been watching us the whole time. And so I crouched down with the guests and we observed this cheetah. This cheetah was during the day again, of course. The cheetah completely ignored us. She does not view humans as food. We've never hurt her or threatened her or made her scared, so she's not afraid of us. So if we're not food and we're not something to be afraid of, the wildlife typically ignores you. So we had an amazing, 15 minutes before with the cubs playing on the mom. The cubs were nursing. It's just mind-blowing experience before they wandered off into the bush. And I'll tell you now, those clients who I was with, those 2 gals, still friends with them on Facebook, they remember that experience to this day and will forever.
I think that's one of those once in a lifetime. Like, that is the beauty of an experience like a safari. We obviously plan travel around the world, and there's beauty and excitement in every different type of travel experience, but there's nothing like being up close to a lion or seeing a cheetah with her baby cubs in their natural environment. It is just a transformational experience. So I think that that's such a great story to share. And we do have one final question before we wrap up. And this is from Kathy. She'd like to know if you can speak quickly to the travel safety for U.S. travelers, politically speaking, to places like Zimbabwe and South Africa. Is it safe for Americans to travel there? Are there any concerns that we should let people know about?
Yeah, so great question. And I would put, personally, I put political safety, high on the list of things to check when wanting to travel internationally. I'm very connected, very plugged in. I still have family back in South Africa. So from a South African standpoint, I know what's going on and politically. I know that as of today, there is no issue for Americans to travel to South Africa. And in fact, tourism plays a large part in many South African countries' economy. And as such, they focus on tourists, they welcome tourists, they embrace tourists. And I would say that, possibly in comparison to many other European countries, I would put African countries as a far safer destination for American travelers to go to. In Tanzania, the people there are just so peaceful, so relaxed. I feel tremendously safe there. In South Africa, are there areas where you're not going to walk around? 100%. They're just like in New York, just like in Los Angeles. But every now and then, an incident may occur in Uganda or Rwanda or something like that. We're on top of it. We stay close to it. But if we're representing a country and planning safaris to that country, you can be assured that through our due diligence, our local in-country contacts and partners who we've known for years and years and years, who we visit, who we catch up with, we know if there's any sort of issue and we need to shift gears. To date, it hasn't happened. Every client I've booked so far has gone on their safari and had a fantastic time, and political issues have never been a cause for concern or in order to have to change anything.
That's great. That's great to hear. And my final question to you is, when should people start planning their safari? If, is now a good time to start planning? How far in advance should people be planning and thinking about a safari?
Yeah, the general rule of thumb was 12 months if possible. And 12 months seems like a very long time. I feel the nature of the style perhaps of American travelers, 12 months is perhaps almost too far. I'm not thinking about year. I'm thinking maybe January, February. I'm thinking about July or August. And often in safari world, because as I mentioned previously, these properties are so small, there's only 5 rooms, so it can get booked out super quick. And June, July, August, American holidays, everybody wants to go and these places can get fully booked. The good news with currently, just because of obvious circumstances, availability is much better. So finding space, finding availability is super easy to do. and even in the busy seasons, June, July, August. So general rule of thumb, as far in advance as possible. If it's within a 6-month period for high season, your choices might become more limited. So perhaps the less expensive lodges or the very, very expensive lodges will have availability, and the ones in that sweet spot might be already full. If you're traveling around the Christmas period, of course, December, pretty much everywhere where you go to, you really want to get in early and book your travel early. Just one thing, if I can add to that, if anybody has a concern about making their booking or making reservations, if there is one good thing that has changed in the travel industry, is the whole review and reassessment and relaxation of booking terms and conditions at these properties. Now, whilst
that's huge peace of mind for
people. It is. So, aside from the obvious, do I need travel insurance? Yes, you do. Making a booking these days through yourselves and through me is a very simple affair. The lodges, each lodge has a different cancellation policy, but what I can tell you, they are way better than they were pre-COVID. Some examples of what they are is you can cancel 30 days prior. Oh, okay. So even if you've paid your money, we'll give it back to you. You can cancel 14 days prior. You can cancel, but we ask that you just rebook in 2 years' time or rebook in 1 year's time. So super, super flexible rules are now in place, and a good thing. And I quite frankly, I think it's going to remain the norm going forward. Each airline also has a different policy. Again, I think the rule of thumb is if there's COVID-related issues, if you're unable to travel, you've got free changes. You can book it out 1 year, 2 years. Each airline is slightly different, but again, I think the airlines will also adopt newer and more traveler-friendlier rules around booking and rebooking going forward. I mean, I would love to see the Southwest Airlines cancellation policy within every airline. It's like, oh, I can't fly, cancel. No worry, here's your money. We got it. It's not going anywhere. You can use it anytime. So,
Neil, thank you so much for joining us today. And obviously, it's impossible to cover an entire continent in one conversation. So we hope you'll join us again soon.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, Janet. Thanks, Angie.
Absolutely. Have a great day.